Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today we dive back into the DVD collection for the final time with W X Y and Z. Just over 800 movies have been examined in the course of this series, and it's taken just over a year. We actually started back in July 2016, and obviously in the course of that year we have added to this DVD library, and I've tried to keep it all up to date as we've gone. But hopefully this has been an interesting exercise for you guys. I mean, I've seen a couple of comments along the lines of, "I did not know that film was any good. I shall check it out." This kind of thing. So you've been exposed to a film you might not have otherwise watched. And I've certainly found this a very useful exercise in examining our DVD collection, sort of justifying it to myself, and also actually reminding me and my wife, in fact, of those films in our collection which we're yet to watch. So this has been good all round, and so I'm really happy to bring it to a close, starting with WALL-E. WALL-E is simply the best children's post-apocalyptic disaster film I've ever seen. No, it's just fantastic. It's an animated, towering achievement. Not least because, for example, I think for the first half hour there's almost no dialogue in the movie. It's a film which is very human, and yet it's about a robot, two robots perhaps falling in love. It's a film that beautifully and elegantly examines our dependence upon technology, the way that we blindly give our lives over to essentially corporate control. It's a movie about the environment. It's a movie about space travel. It's a movie about politics and control and this kind of thing, and crucially it's all wrapped up in a beautiful character like WALL-E. Simply spectacular. If you haven't seen it, you owe it to yourself to watch WALL-E. Next we have Walk the Line 1, 2, 3, apparently for some reason. This film is a fantastic biopic. Johnny Cash and June Carter in particular is the focus, but it's a biopic essentially about the founding days in many respects of rock and roll as we would come to know it. You get to see like a young Elvis, for example, in this film. If you're remotely a fan of the music, if you're remotely a fan of in particular Johnny Cash, the Man in Black, check it out. Also, Joaquin Phoenix in the role of Johnny Cash apparently sang and played in real life. There's a rumour that they had to alter his voice, but apparently they didn't. So very good. Wallace and Gromit. Essentially, we have the complete collection on DVD because we just cannot wait for that stuff to come around once a year at Christmas or New Year or whatever, or Boxing Day. So we have the complete collection on DVD along with Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which isn't as good in my humble opinion as the 4 TV feature length features that they do, but it's all part of the same universe, and so more than happy to have it. Waltz with Bashir, a fairly hard-hitting animation in a similar vein to, for example, Persepolis, another DVD that we've seen earlier in the collection, which really uses stark and elegant animation to examine very difficult topics, and in this case it's it's war in the Lebanon region. The animation on DVD here is rated 18, so it's definitely not for kids, but it's still worth watching. It's an engaging, engrossing, arresting film, as it were. War of the Worlds. As long as you don't link this at all to the radio play or to the wonderful record voiced by Richard Burton, then you're good. It's not in that sense. It's not War of the World. It's certainly not as good as the book, but it is a very good sci-fi popcorn action blockbuster, explosions, alien squidgy things type film. So that's why we have it. It's fun. It's just not quite what it could have been. Watchmen. It's interesting, isn't it? The graphic novel is such an icon, a monolith in in the world of comics, that the film was always bound to have a certain reputation, and that reputation, I think, is well founded. It is a beautiful film. It's well directed. It's well constructed. It does stray from the comic book in certain ways, but I can forgive it for that in many ways as well. But it suffers from the Snyder. Snyder has essentially been bit by bit just disappearing up his own creative backside, and I know he's recently had some horrible things happen in his life, especially with his daughter. But I could not be more happy that he's no longer directly involved with directing DCEU movies. And Watchmen was the beginning of that for me. I mean, following on from the 300, people loved the visual style that he established. And for example, I love the remake of The Walking Dead that he was in charge of. But you know, when you get into Sucker Punch and Batman versus Superman versus Batman versus Superman, whatever, Dawn of Justice, it's just clear that Snyder maybe needs to reevaluate how he directs films and the balance between a visual and the overall structure of a film. And I think Watchmen is on the verge of falling apart under its own weight in that sense. So it's a beautiful film, but it's just scarcely holding itself together. Watchmen Tales of Black Freighter is an animated sort of addition to the Watchmen universe. Very watchable. Waterhorse Legend of the Deep is actually my wife's film. It's one of her favourite children's films. Good Scottish fun. That's what I'll say. Good fun. Very nice and light-hearted. We Bought a Zoo. A bit strange seeing Matt Damon in this role as the father of a family who bought a zoo. Some very predictable story elements, for example, who falls in love with who, blah, 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 blah. And it feels at times like a movie that's kind of demonstrating Matt Damon's range, like Matt Damon, I have a range almost. But once you forgive it for that, it's a very charming, lovely story about a family who buy a zoo. Welcome to the Jungle is a fascinating movie. It came out in and around the time I was working at Blockbuster and or going to uni, that kind of period in my life. And I loved it when it came out. I thought it was lots of fun, and I didn't realise this really at the time, but now watching it, it's clear that at the time there's a very strong sense that they were sort of introducing to you, handing over to you the succession to the successor, to Arnold Schwarzenegger. In fact, Arnie comes into the film at one point and essentially says, have fun, while I'm away, and he goes off to be the governor of California, and Dwayne the Rock Johnson, apparently is picking up that baton. I think it would be another few years before he really picked up the baton, as it were. And even then, he's a very different character and very different actor to Arnie. So it's an interesting one because it had this sort of Hollywood political role, the successor to Arnold Schwarzenegger. But that's just looking back. I mean, at the time and indeed still now, it's a good, solid, fun, tongue-in-cheek action film. It's good. Next we have What We Did on Our Holiday, which is a fantastic, very British film, made by the same people who did the TV series Outnumbered, which is a TV series which is made in a very particular way, in so much as the children are essentially off script. They have a broad scenario that they have to act within, but they don't have lines that they have to feed, or indeed that they are fed. They kind of say what comes into their minds, and so in the TV series it comes up with all these beautiful sort of surreal little moments that come out of that sort of spontaneity, and some of that makes its way into this film. It stars David Tennant as the dad, Billy Connolly as granddad, and Rosamund Pike, the wonderful Rosamund Pike, as mum, and they're just trying to hold this family together in the midst of some very stressful times, shall we say. And also, I like the way that the film doesn't wrap up in like a beautiful Hollywood ending where everything's suddenly better. Things are better, but they're also different. Nothing, people don't go back to the way that they were before, even though they have some problems in this film. So it's a very real family film in that sense. But also it's got some very funny elements as well. In particular, there's a Viking funeral, shall we say. Yeah, it's good. It's good fun. When Harry Met Sally, classic, total classic romance movie. Yeah, gotta watch it. Billy Crystal, at his least annoying and best. Where Eagles Dare. Oh goodness me! Lots of men get very excited about this film. I don't. I'm not that guy. But what I will say is that we own it because I do appreciate the film. I appreciate how much fun it is. It is silly. It's a very silly. Well, no. The thing is, for some people, it's not silly. For some people, it's very serious. But it's a fiction where Clint Eastwood does slightly ridiculous things in the Second World War, shall we say? Yeah, it's good. It's okay. Next, we have White Noise and White Noise: The Light. Now, White Noise is a film that's basically based on the ghost hunting electronic voice phenomena sort of idea that TV static and the white noise that you get on what used to be cassette machines, for example, could hide the voices of the dead. You may hear little whispers coming through, and so they play with that, they run with it, and in the first film they run with it in quite a satisfying way. It's actually a bit of a mystery movie as well. Where are certain people and this kind of thing. The second film I got in a pound shop. Let's just say that I got that DVD for £1 in a pound shop, and I added it to my basket because I needed to spend a certain amount of money in order to be able to use my card. So I didn't necessarily want to buy the second film. So that one stars Nathan Fillion, and it is good fun, but it's also very silly. It's not as effective in its atmosphere as the first one. So yeah, White Noise. I think there's a reason that, to my knowledge at least, there's not been a White Noise 3, as it were. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Oh, I could talk about this all day. In fact, I might have to make a video about this at some point in the future. But Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is a film that I have immense nostalgia for. But the older I've got, the more annoyed I've become with it, because Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is, in that sense, fairly loosely inspired by Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yes, it does stick to lots of the key story elements, and Gene Wilder is spectacular as Wonka, but it's a film that, for me, as I say, the older I've got, feels more inauthentic, because it's definitely not a British or European film as it should be, if you know what I mean. The story is set in very particular environments and particular visions of for example, being poor and this kind of thing. And this film, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, is very 70s American, basically. Especially Grandpa Joe or whatever. It's kind of off-putting now, as a grown-up, to watch it. But that said, as well, it's still got the magic, the reveal of the subsequent revealings of the layers of the Chocolate Factory are spectacular. And as I say, Willy Wonka is a brilliant performance. And so in some ways, I think combining Tim Burton's vision, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, with this one into one cake, that would be the perfect version for me. But alas, that's not possible. So it's good. I love it, but I'm also slightly annoyed by it as well, because it is so American. It's so of its time, and it's in that sense, it reveals an awful lot about how people, especially in the US, view the rest of the world as well, funnily enough, including Brits. Anyway, moving on. Wimbledon, a solid romance movie set in and around the Wimbledon tennis tournament here in the UK, SW1 or whatever. And it has some cutting-edge computer-generated imagery, CGI technology. There's a sequence involving a tennis ball, as you might expect, and the way the tennis ball moves around the court is apparently cutting-edge. Who knew? Who knew you'd need some cutting-edge technology, CGI technology in Wimbledon, in a Wimbledon romance film? With Nell and I, classic, dirty comedy. And by dirty, I don't necessarily mean blue, I mean it just feels, especially the character of Withnell, feels very grimy. There's a drinking game, or various drinking games associated with this movie. Do not try to drink what the characters actually drink in the film. Definitely don't do that, because you'll die. but try and keep up with them using some other beverage and see how drunk you get, how quickly. Wizard of Oz, colour, obviously. The first film I seem to recall ever filmed in colour. A spectacular cinematic experience. What more can I say? It's good, and it's probably actually, this is where that Americana I think really works, because the Wizard of Oz is American, you know, where Charlie and the Chocolate Factory isn't, and so actually it works here, and where it does in the same way that it doesn't work with Willy Wonka. You see what I mean? Wonder Boys, a slightly heart-wrenching film, a very human, frustrated movie where all the characters are kind of just bouncing off each other in their own sort of frustrated lives. For me, I like most of my films to be, broadly speaking, entertaining, and this is one of those films that is cinema, as it were. You know, I don't really find it entertaining. I find it quite stressful. This, in the same way I don't watch soap operas, I don't tend to watch, for example, Wonder Boy or Wonder Boys. Still worth a watch though. Very powerful performances, definitely. World War Z. A film which I love the book. I love the Max Brooks. The sort of essentially the I don't know what you'd call it really. The novel, I guess. But it's, you know, the way that the book is written is a series of reports and interviews. The associated there's a little sort of small graphic novel outlining some of the historic zombie attacks, like Romans and this kind of thing, in prehistoric and other appearances of zombies. Max Brooks created such a fleshed out, no pun intended, zombie universe, vision of the world, that World War Z really was never going to deliver on that, and it tried its best to do something different and interesting with the license, I guess, and it kind of achieved it. It kind of worked in so much as it had this sort of global sense of it was, you know, it was a bit like a bit like Day After Tomorrow or Independence Day, but with zombies. Problem is though, is that the zombies aren't. They're more like they're actually, funnily enough, they're probably more realistic in so much as they behave like, yeah, those ants that you see that are infected with mushrooms and, you know, spores in the jungles of Brazil. The zombies, though, do not therefore behave like classic zombies. And the thing is, Max Brooks' work, and I'm pointing behind me because my bookshelf is behind me, Max Brooks' zombies are classic zombies. The way that he describes them, the way that he describes how you're infected, the way that they behave. And so in that sense, they're kind of incompatible with this vision that World War Z has created. Well, also, it wasn't helped by the fact that Mark Forster, I believe the director, had huge falling out, huge sort of creative differences with Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt, I think, carries the film very well. But that third act, where apparently they had to reshoot the whole thing, basically, they just rewrote it, reshot it and everything, it ends up making the whole movie feel a bit rushed, a bit sort of slapped together, put a label on it and put it out in the cinema. And that's basically what happened because of the troubles with the production. I have high hopes, I suppose, for World War Z 2. I'm hoping that the second one will be good, not least because it's going to be directed by David Fincher, apparently. Fingers crossed. But it's good. It adds something to the zombie universe in terms of films, I guess. And I like the angle. Like I said, but the angle comes from the book, in so much as there's someone from the UN who's trying to tackle this in the same way that you might tackle an Ebola outbreak or a WHO, World Health Organization crisis. I like that. That's the thing I like, and that's what I like in this film when it's working properly. Next we have X-Men Season 1, Volume 1. Again, picked up from a pound shop, but this was my X-Men, the 90s animated X-Men. I need to get hold of more of that stuff. X-Men First Class, a good X-Men movie, but not perfect. It does have some problems. But I like it. It was almost like a soft reboot for X-Men, and sort of obviously it's led into what would follow X-Men, Days of Future Past, Apocalypse, so on and so forth. Yeah. To be honest, I'd quite like to see all the X-Men movies get essentially restarted from the beginning with a more of an integrated sense of the world that they're working with. They've sort of tagged on Deadpool onto the current X-Men canon, and they're kind of trying to make it a bit of an in-joke that the X-Men movies don't quite work. But I think really they kind of need to start again, and also they need to go to the heart of what the X-Men are, and that is essentially X-Men is the civil rights movement, but with superpowers, and they had some of that in the early X-Men movies, especially the first one, but that's kind of, it's just a bit wishy-washy and sort of samey, if I'm honest. The latest X-Men movies, which you'll notice we don't own, are all a bit samey. Same sort of stuff happens, same sort of stakes are offered, and the same sort of resolution occurs. And Mystique, I think, is far too central in the movie universe. Anyway, she should be mysterious, and at the moment she's not. She's our hero for some reason. X-Men Evolution Mutants Rising, a fairly solid, fun little sort of series about, the series that was on TV for a while in the early 2000s, I do believe. Good fun, good X-Men stories. X-Men Origins Wolverine has problems, we all know that. I kind of like the movie, if only because I like what the movie sort of hints at. I like the fact that it hints at the amount of time that Wolverine has been knocking around and fighting in wars and this kind of thing. And maybe actually that opening sequence that they had just as basically the credits at the beginning of the film, that could have been the film. That should have been the film. And then they could have told the later story after that. But yeah. So anyway, X-Men Triple, X-Men 2, X-Men 3 Last Stand. X-Men 3 The Last Stand is rubbish. X-Men 2, pretty good, probably the best of the three. And the original X-Men is brilliant. So yeah. But again, still not perfect. I think there's lots of room to redo the X-Men from the start. More animated X-Men. Yes, Minister, season 2 and 3 for some reason, not season 1. Yes, Minister is sadly still very relevant, even though it's set in the 1970s and it's basically a farce. It's all about how farcical government is. The wheeling and dealing, the interaction between politicians and the civil service, and it's still as relevant today as it ever was. Yeah. Blackadder, the complete collection. It's good. Zodiac. Yes. David Fincher, and a meticulous examination of the criminal case of the Zodiac. A brilliant film. I got the director's extra, special cut. Wonderful, and of course meticulous. I mean, it's just, I've already used that word, I know, but it is just meticulous. I get it, every shot is just lovely. I do, yeah. So David Fincher doing zombies is going to be fascinating. Zombie Hunters, no, do not ever watch this. It is a reissued version of a film. I got this DVD again from a pound shop. I thought, oh, why not? It could be good. It is rubbish. It is literally produced. I mean, I can do better green screen in this room here. It is just the worst, low budget, shitty little film I've ever seen. Do not have it. Do not get it. Do not own it. Do not buy it. Do not rent it. Do not lend it to someone, because they will hate you forever. No, definitely not. Zombieland, though, that's the opposite. Definitely watch Zombieland. Definitely lend Zombieland to people, because they will love you forever. Zoolander. I got Zoolander when it came out, and it is very much of its time. And I think this is the reason why Zoolander 2 didn't really have the traction that it could have had, because Zoolander's time has come and gone. Ben Stiller, though, is pretty good fun. David Bowie makes a cameo in this, which is excellent. And yeah, it's good, but it is of its time, definitely. Zulu. Now this is an interesting one. Zulu is a film of its time, the 1960s, and it's a film that really works in its film, if you see what I mean. It's the drama is immense and intense, and the way everything is set up is just, it's like a ratcheting tension build up to a battle between this garrison of British soldiers and essentially a Zulu kingdom. So it's one of my favourite films for that, and also actually because there's some very good, interesting sort of portrayals of Welshmen in this film. What I would say though is that as a historian, I'm aware that this film and indeed other documents from the time portray what happened in a very particular way. Essentially, all you have to do is look at the casualties on both sides. It's clear that the guys with the guns did a lot better than the guys with the spears, if so I mean. So I'm not saying this is a super accurate history film, but it is an incredibly visceral movie experience. And finally, we have Triple X. For some reason, that wasn't further up in this list. Triple X. What a way to end this list! What a way to end this collection. Yeah, I have it because of nostalgia. It's a good bad film. Let's put it like that, shall we? Triple X, Vin Diesel. And there we have it. A year's worth of exploring our DVD collection comes to an end with Triple X. Yeah. Hopefully this has been interesting and or useful for you. And thank you for coming with me on this expedition through the DVD collection. As ever, guys, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.